Single mother agrees to bathe millionaire to cure her daughter illness, but when she undresses him, Sophia Mitchell clutched her worn leather purse tightly as she stood before the imposing iron gates of Thornton Estate. The sprawling mansion perched on the hillside overlooked the entire city, its stone facade gleaming in the morning sunlight. She checked her watch, 7:55 a.m., 5 minutes early for her interview. Deep breaths, she whispered to herself, smoothing down her only decent blouse. The security guard examined her ID before nodding curtly and allowing the gates to swing open. The driveway seemed endless, lined with perfectly manicured hedges and marble fountains that probably cost more than her annual salary. As a single mother working as a hospital nurse, Sophia was accustomed to modest surroundings. Nothing like this display of obscene wealth. When she finally reached the massive double doors, they opened before she could knock. An elegant older woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun stood in the doorway, her posture impeccable. "Miss Mitchell, I presume? I'm Mrs. Lancaster, Mr. Thornton's head of household." Her voice was crisp and professional. "You're punctual. That's a good start." Sophia followed Mrs. Lancaster through the marble foyer, past priceless artwork and antiques that made her afraid to breathe too deeply. The interior of the mansion was even more impressive than its exterior: vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and furniture that belonged in museums. "Mr. Thornton has gone through 7 private nurses in the past 3 months, Mrs. Lancaster explained as they walked. "He can be challenging." "I've handled difficult patients before," Sophia replied, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Mrs. Lancaster stopped abruptly, turning to face Sophia with a penetrating gaze. "This isn't a typical nursing position, Miss Mitchell. Mr. Thornton was severely injured in a private plane crash 18 months ago. He's partially paralyzed from the waist down. He requires extensive physical therapy, medication management, and," she paused, "personal care." Sophia nodded professionally. "I understand. I've worked with paralysis patients before. That includes bathing him." Sophia's step faltered slightly. "Excuse me? Bathing Mr. Thornton, assisting with all personal hygiene, is that going to be a problem?" Mrs. Lancaster's tone suggested this was where most candidates balked. Sophia swallowed hard. The thought of bathing a strange man, a billionaire no less, made her deeply uncomfortable. But then she thought of Lily's medical bills piling up on her kitchen table, the specialist's words echoing in her mind. "Without surgery within the next 6 months, your daughter's condition will deteriorate significantly." The salary offered in the job listing was triple what she made at the hospital. "No," Sophia said firmly, "that won't be a problem." Mrs. Lancaster's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Good. Because despite his temperament, Mr. Thornton is a good man who deserves dignity and respect." They stopped outside a heavy wooden door. Mrs. Lancaster lowered her voice. "One more thing you should know. Mr. Thornton was one of the most powerful CEOs in the tech industry before his accident. He's not accustomed to depending on others. His frustration manifests as anger. Don't take it personally." Before Sophia could respond, Mrs. Lancaster knocked on the door and opened it without waiting for a response. "Mr. Thornton, your 8 a.m. appointment is here. Sophia Mitchell, the nurse I mentioned." Sophia stepped into a dimly lit study. Floor-to-ceiling windows should have flooded the room with light, but heavy curtains were drawn across them. A figure sat in a wheelchair behind an imposing desk, his back to the door. "Another one." The voice was deep, cultured, and dripping with disdain. "How long do you think this one will last, Mrs. Lancaster? A week? Perhaps 2? Sophia's spine stiffened. She'd dealt with entitled patients before, but something about his tone made her blood boil. "Mr. Thornton," she said before Mrs. Lancaster could respond, "I understand you've had a difficult time finding suitable care. I assure you, I'm fully qualified and not easily intimidated." The wheelchair slowly turned, and Sophia found herself face to face with Gabriel Thornton for the first time. She had expected an older man, perhaps frail and diminished by his injuries. Instead, she was confronted by a man in his late 30s with sharp, aristocratic features, penetrating blue eyes, and a jawline that could cut glass. His dark hair was slightly too long, as if he couldn't be bothered with something as trivial as a haircut. Despite being confined to a wheelchair, there was nothing weak about Gabriel Thornton. Power radiated from him like heat from a flame. Not easily intimidated? His eyes traveled over her dismissively. We'll see about that. Gabriel Thornton's piercing blue eyes narrowed as he studied Sophia. Your resume says you worked in the trauma unit at Mercy General for 5 years. Why leave a stable position for this? His directness caught Sophia off guard, but she maintained her composure. The compensation is better, Mr. Thornton. I'm practical about my priorities. A hint of surprise flickered across his face before his expression hardened again. At least you're honest. Most candidates spout nonsense about making a difference in my life. He wheeled his chair around the desk, revealing his full appearance. Despite being seated, Gabriel Thornton was imposing. His shoulders were broad under his tailored shirt, his forearms muscular where his sleeves were rolled up. This was not the body of someone who had given up, at least not physically. Your duties will include medication management, physical therapy assistance, wound care, and personal hygiene, he stated clinically. Mrs. Lancaster has likely mentioned that includes bathing. Does that make you uncomfortable, Ms. Mitchell? I'm a professional nurse, Mr. Thornton. The human body doesn't embarrass me, Sophia replied, though her heart raced at the thought. A cynical smile curved his lips. We'll see about that. The last nurse quit after 3 days, said I was impossible. He leaned forward slightly. I'm not an easy patient, Miss Mitchell. I don't need your pity, and I won't tolerate incompetence. I don't offer pity, Mr. Thornton. I offer professional care. There's a difference. Mrs. Lancaster cleared her throat. Perhaps I should show Miss Mitchell the medical suite and her quarters? Gabriel waved his hand dismissively. Fine, but I want to see her credentials again before you finalize anything, and I'll need a demonstration of her skills. As Mrs. Lancaster led Sophia from the room, she could feel Gabriel's eyes boring into her back. Don't mind him, Mrs. Lancaster said once they were in the hallway. He wasn't always like this. The accident changed him. The tour revealed a mansion that had been extensively modified to accommodate Gabriel's condition. A state-of-the-art medical suite occupied what had once been a guest wing, complete with physical therapy equipment, a hydrotherapy pool, and a specially designed bathroom. This is where most of your duties will take place, Mrs. Lancaster explained. Mr. Thornton requires hydrotherapy 3 times weekly and daily physical therapy. Sophia nodded, mentally cataloging the equipment. And my quarters? Mrs. Lancaster led her to a beautiful suite adjacent to Gabriel's rooms. You'll be on call 24/7, but you'll have every Sunday off. The salary includes room and board, of course. After reviewing the detailed care plan, Sophia found herself back in Gabriel's study for final approval. Your references check out, he said without preamble. When can you start? Tomorrow, Sophia replied. I need today to make arrangements for my daughter. Gabriel's eyebrow raised slightly. You have a child? Yes, a 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Something unreadable passed across his face. Mrs. Lancaster didn't mention that. Is it a problem? No, he said after a pause, as long as it doesn't interfere with your duties here. It won't, Sophia assured him, though she wondered how she would manage being away from Lily 5 days a week. Her mother had agreed to help, but it wouldn't be easy. Very well. Report tomorrow at 7 a.m. Your first task will be assisting with my morning routine. The following morning arrived too quickly. After a tearful goodbye with Lily, Sophia arrived at Thornton Estate with her bags and a knot of anxiety in her stomach. Mrs. Lancaster greeted her and immediately led her to Gabriel's suite. He's already awake. He rarely sleeps past 5 a.m. these days. Gabriel was in his bedroom, seated in his wheelchair by the window, staring out at the gardens. He didn't turn when they entered. "Your nurse is here, Mr. Thornton," Mrs. Lancaster announced. "Fine, you can go." His tone was clipped. Once Mrs. Lancaster left, Gabriel finally turned to face Sophia. "My morning routine includes a bath before physical therapy. The bathroom is through there." He nodded toward a door. "I trust you've reviewed my care plan?" Sophia nodded, her professional demeanor firmly in place despite her nervousness. "Yes." "I understand you prefer the hydrotherapy tub for bathing." "Correct. I can transfer myself from the chair to the tub. You'll assist with the actual bathing." He wheeled himself into the massive bathroom with Sophia following. The bathroom was bigger than her entire apartment, with a specially designed hydrotherapy tub as its centerpiece. Gabriel began unbuttoning his shirt, his movements efficient despite his condition. Sophia busied herself preparing the bath, checking the water temperature and gathering supplies. When she turned back, her breath caught in her throat. Gabriel had removed his shirt, revealing a torso that defied her expectations. Despite his paralysis, his upper body was powerfully built, with defined muscles and broad shoulders. A jagged scar ran across his right side, evidence of the crash that had changed his life. Noticing her surprise, Gabriel's mouth twisted into a bitter smile. "Not what you expected from a cripple, is it?" Sophia recovered quickly. "I don't use that word, Mr. Thornton, and many of my patients maintain excellent upper body strength. It's actually beneficial for mobility." Using a transfer board, Gabriel smoothly moved himself from the wheelchair to the bath seat. His pajama bottoms were still on. "I'll need assistance with the rest," he said, his jaw tight with what Sophia recognized as embarrassment masked as irritation. Sophia approached professionally, helping him remove his remaining clothing and settle into the warm water. She kept her expression neutral, though she couldn't help noticing that his paralysis had spared nothing of his masculine beauty. The contrast between his powerful physique and his inability to walk created a tension in the room that was almost palpable. As she began to wash his back, Gabriel spoke unexpectedly. "The water temperature is correct. The last nurse always made it too hot." It wasn't quite a compliment, but Sophia recognized it as the closest thing to approval she was likely to get. "I noticed your preference in the care plan," she replied simply. As she continued bathing him, the intimate nature of the task hung heavy in the air between them. For all her professional experience, Sophia had never felt quite so aware of a patient as a man before. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophia settled into a routine at Thornton Estate. Each morning began with Gabriel's bath, followed by physical therapy, medication management, and wound care for the persistent pressure sores on his lower back. Though he remained distant and often irritable, the open hostility of their first meeting had gradually subsided into something resembling a professional relationship. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Sophia was helping Gabriel with his stretching exercises when her phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it quickly, a message from her mother about Lily's doctor appointment. "Something important?" Gabriel asked, noticing her distraction. "My daughter has a cardiology appointment today," Sophia replied, returning her attention to his leg exercises. Gabriel's eyebrows rose slightly. "Cardiology? What's wrong with her?" Sophia hesitated, unused to personal questions from him. "Lily has a congenital heart defect, ventricular septal defect with pulmonary hypertension. She needs surgery, but—" She trailed off, not wanting to discuss her financial struggles. "But it's expensive," Gabriel finished for her. His tone wasn't pitying, merely matter-of-fact. "Yes, even with insurance, the specialist and surgery costs are substantial." Sophia adjusted the resistance on the leg press. "That's why this position is so important to me." Gabriel was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. "How old did you say she was?" 6. "She starts first grade this fall." Something flickered across his face. Pain, perhaps, or memory. "I was 6 when my father died," he said unexpectedly. "Heart attack. Ironic considering how much he worried about his health." Sophia was surprised by this personal revelation. "I'm sorry." Gabriel shrugged, wincing slightly as she moved his leg through its range of motion. "It was a long time ago. My mother remarried quickly a man who had little interest in another man's son. I was raised primarily by staff." His tone was detached, as if discussing someone else's life. "That must have been difficult," Sophia said carefully. "It taught me self-reliance." His jaw tightened. "Something I've had to relearn since the accident." Sensing an opening, Sophia asked, "Would you mind telling me more about what happened? It might help me understand your condition better." Gabriel was quiet for so long that Sophia thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. 18 months ago, I was flying back from a business meeting in Tokyo. My private jet encountered severe turbulence over the Pacific. The pilot tried to divert, but..." He paused. "We crashed during an emergency landing attempt. The pilot and my assistant died instantly. I survived with a spinal cord injury at T10. Incomplete paraplegic," Sophia noted, recalling his medical file. "Yes. The doctors initially thought I might regain some function in my legs, but progress has been minimal." His voice hardened. "I can feel sensation in parts of my lower body, but movement is limited. The prognosis remains uncertain." "But you've stopped going to your specialist appointments," Sophia observed, remembering the notations in his file. "The last visit was 8 months ago." Gabriel's expression darkened. What's the point? More tests, more false hope, more pitying looks from doctors who see me as a failed case rather than a person. "Medical science advances every day," Sophia countered, "and you have resources most patients can only dream of." "Money can't fix everything, Miss Mitchell," his tone was bitter. "Something I'm sure you understand, given your daughter's condition." The session continued in silence after that, the weight of their conversation hanging between them. Later that afternoon, while Gabriel was on a conference call in his study, Sophia took the opportunity to organize his medications. As she worked in the medical suite, she noticed a door she hadn't opened before, slightly ajar now, perhaps left open by Mrs. Lancaster during cleaning. Curiosity got the better of her. Sophia pushed the door open to find what appeared to be a secondary office. Unlike the formal study where Gabrielle usually worked, this room was cluttered with technology, multiple computer screens displaying complex data, stock tickers, and code. A specially designed ergonomic workstation was positioned for wheelchair access. This was clearly where Gabriel still ran his empire, away from the eyes of visitors or business associates who might see weakness in his condition. One screen showed an email draft addressed to the board of directors of Thornton Technologies, outlining strategic acquisitions and defending Gabriel's continued leadership despite his temporary physical limitations. Another displayed the company's stock performance impressively positive despite rumors about the CEO's health. "Snooping Ms. Mitchell?" Sophia whirled around to find Gabriel in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "The door was open, and I was organizing your medications." "And thought you'd take a tour of my private office?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "I didn't mean to intrude," Sophia said firmly. "But I'm actually glad to see this. You're still running your company?" "Did you think I spent my days feeling sorry for myself?" he asked sharply. "Most people would, after what you've been through." Gabriel wheeled himself fully into the room, closing the door behind him. "I'm not most people. Thornton Technologies is my life's work. I won't let a spinal cord injury take that from me, too." Sophia gestured to the screens. "Does your board know you're still this involved?" A sardonic smile twisted his lips. "They believe I'm taking a healing sabbatical, while our COO handles day-to-day operations. In reality, I make every significant decision. The board is pushing for me to step down permanently. They think a CEO in a wheelchair is bad for the company image." That's discrimination, Sophia said, indignant on his behalf. That's business, Gabriel countered. Image matters. A leader must appear strong, invulnerable. Strength isn't just physical, Sophia argued. What you're doing here, continuing to lead despite everything, that shows real strength. Gabriel studied her face, as if searching for insincerity. Finding none, he seemed to relax slightly. Few people see it that way, he said quietly. Most either pity me or are waiting for me to fail. I'm not most people either, Mr. Thornton. For the first time since they'd met, Gabriel Thornton smiled a genuine smile that transformed his face and made Sophia's heart skip unexpectedly. No, he agreed, you're certainly not. As April turned to May, the rigid professional boundaries between Sophia and Gabriel began to soften. Their morning routine, once tense and uncomfortable, developed a rhythm that felt almost natural. Gabriel still maintained his reserved demeanor, but the cutting remarks became less frequent, replaced by occasional questions about Lily or Sophia's previous work. During one morning bath, Gabrielle noticed a small tattoo on Sophia's wrist as she rolled up her sleeves, a tiny heartbeat line. I wouldn't have pegged you for the tattoo type, he remarked. Sophia smiled slightly. I got it after Lily's first major surgery when she was 2. It's her actual heartbeat from the monitor the first time it stabilized after the procedure. Gabriel studied it thoughtfully. A permanent reminder of what matters most to you. Exactly. Sophia helped him rinse his hair, her movements gentle and practiced. Do you have any tattoos hidden away, Mr. Thornton? Gabriel, he said unexpectedly. Excuse me? My name is Gabriel. After a month of seeing me naked every morning, I think we can dispense with Mr. Thornton. Sophia felt her cheeks warm slightly. All right, Gabriel. You didn't answer my question. A hint of amusement crossed his face. No tattoos. My rebellion took other forms. Like what? Dropping out of Harvard to start my first company. My mother didn't speak to me for a year. He shifted in the bath, wincing slightly. The water's getting cold. Sophia helped him out of the tub and into a seated position on the transfer bench, wrapping a towel around his waist. As she began drying his back, she noticed him tense. Pain? She asked professionally. Just stiffness. The weather change affects it. Sophia nodded. I've been meaning to suggest something. Your physical therapy routine is good, but I think we could be more aggressive with it. Gabriel turned his head to look at her. The last therapist said I'd reached my plateau. With all due respect to your previous care providers, I don't believe in plateaus, Sophia said firmly. The body can always be challenged further. You sound very confident, Sophia. It was the first time he'd used her first name, and something about the way he said it made her pulse quicken. I worked with a spinal rehabilitation specialist at Mercy General. I've seen patients with similar injuries make significant progress with the right approach. Gabriel was quiet for a moment. What would you suggest? More water therapy, for one. The pool here is underutilized, and I'd like to try some new techniques for stimulating nerve pathways. And you think this will help me walk again? His tone was skeptical, but Sophia detected a hint of something else. Hope, perhaps? I can't promise that, she answered honestly. But I believe we can improve your mobility and reduce your pain. Would you be willing to try? Their eyes met, and Sophia was struck by the vulnerability beneath his usual guarded expression. Yes, he said simply. That afternoon they began the new therapy regimen in the indoor pool. Gabriel transferred himself from his wheelchair to the pool lift with practiced ease, but Sophia could see the tension in his shoulders not from physical strain, but from exposing his weakness. In the water, however, Gabriel moved with more freedom. Supported by the buoyancy, his legs could move in ways impossible on land. Sophia guided him through a series of exercises, her hands steady and professional on his body. You're stronger than you think, she observed as he completed a particularly challenging movement. The water helps, he replied, but there was less bitterness in his voice than usual. It does, but that's still your body doing the work. As the session progressed, Sophia noticed Gabriel watching her with an intensity that had nothing to do with the exercises. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious in her modest one-piece swimsuit. "You're different from the other nurses," he said. "You don't treat me like I'm broken." "Because you're not," Sophia replied simply. "Injured, yes. Healing, yes. But not broken." Something shifted in Gabriel's expression, a softening around the eyes, a slight parting of lips. For a moment, Sophia thought he might say something more, but instead, he simply nodded and continued with the exercises. The weeks passed, and their sessions became the highlight of Sophia's days. Gabriel was a demanding patient, pushing himself harder than she would have recommended, but his determination was paying off. The muscle tone in his legs improved, and he reported increased sensation in his lower extremities. One evening, after a particularly grueling therapy session, Sophia received a call from her mother while helping Gabriel with his evening medication. "Mom, is everything okay?" she answered, immediately concerned. Gabriel watched as Sophia's expression shifted from worry to distress. "No, she can't miss that appointment. It's critical for her pre-surgical evaluation," Sophia said, her voice tight. "I understand you have work, but—" She broke off, listening. "Okay, I'll figure something out. Thanks for letting me know." She hung up, her hand trembling slightly. "Problem?" Gabriel asked quietly. Sophia hesitated, then sighed. "My mother can't take Lily to her cardiology appointment next week. She got called into work, and I can't find anyone else on such short notice." "Take the day off," Gabriel said immediately. Sophia looked at him in surprise. "But your therapy schedule—" "Can be adjusted," he finished for her. "Your daughter's health comes first." "Thank you," Sophia said, genuinely touched by his understanding. "The appointment is crucial for determining if she's ready for surgery." Gabriel was quiet for a moment, then asked, "How is she handling all this, Lily?" A soft smile touched Sophia's lips. "Better than I am, honestly. She's so brave she calls her heart condition her special power because it makes her different." "She sounds remarkable," Gabriel said. "Like her mother." Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been building beneath the surface of their professional relationship. Sophia broke the gaze first, busying herself with organizing his medications. "I should check your back for pressure points before bed." In his bedroom, Gabriel transferred himself to the bed with practiced ease. Sophia helped him remove his shirt and roll onto his stomach, then began examining the areas prone to pressure sores. "The inflammation is much better," she noted, her fingers gently probing his lower back. "The new cushion is helping." "Your care is helping," Gabriel corrected quietly. Sophia's hands paused on his skin. She was suddenly acutely aware of the intimacy of their position, her hands on his bare back, the dim lighting of the bedroom, the silence of the house around them. Gabriel turned his head to look at her, his blue eyes intense. "Sophia." The way he said her name sent a shiver through her body. This was dangerous territory. He was her patient, her employer. There were professional boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. "I should let you rest," she said, withdrawing her hands. "Tomorrow's session will be challenging." Gabriel caught her wrist gently before she could move away. "Thank you," he said softly, "not just for the physical care, but for seeing me as a person, not a condition." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight with emotion. "That's who you are to me, Gabriel, a person, a remarkable one." His thumb traced the heartbeat tattoo on her wrist, the touch sending tingles up her arm. "Good night, Sophia." "Good night, Gabriel," she whispered, slipping her hand from his grasp and leaving the room, with her heart pounding in her chest. Later that night, as she lay in her bed in the adjacent suite, Sophia acknowledged the truth she'd been avoiding. She was falling for Gabriel Thornton, and that realization terrified her. The realization that her feelings for Gabrielle had crossed professional boundaries left Sophia restless. For the next few days, she maintained a careful distance, still attentive to his needs, but avoiding the personal conversations that had become commonplace between them. Gabriel noticed the change immediately. "Have I offended you somehow?" he asked during their morning therapy session, his tone carefully neutral. "Of course not," Sophia replied, focusing on adjusting the resistance bands on his legs rather than meeting his eyes. "Then why the sudden formality? You've barely spoken 10 words to me today." Sophia sighed, finally looking up at him. "I'm just trying to maintain appropriate professional boundaries." Gabriel's expression hardened slightly. "I see. And our conversations crossed those boundaries." "It's not that simple," Sophia admitted. "I just need to remember why I'm here." "As my nurse," Gabriel stated flatly. "Yeah." The word hung between them, creating a distance greater than the physical space separating them. "Very well, Miss Mitchell," Gabriel said, reverting to formality with an edge to his voice. "Let's continue with the exercises." The tension between them persisted throughout the day, making their usually comfortable routine feel strained and awkward. By evening, Sophia was emotionally exhausted from maintaining her professional facade. As she was preparing Gabrielle's evening medications, her phone rang, Lily's face lighting up the screen. "Excuse me, I need to take this," she said, stepping into the hallway. "Hi, sweetheart. How was school?" Gabriel couldn't help overhearing Sophia's side of the conversation, her voice softening as she spoke to her daughter, asking about homework and friends. The transformation was striking, from the guarded professional to the loving mother in an instant. When Sophia returned, her expression was troubled. "Everything okay?" Gabriel asked, his earlier irritation forgotten. "Lily's not feeling well, dizzy spells again." Sophia's professional composure slipped, revealing her worry. "It's a symptom of her condition worsening." Gabriel watched her carefully measure his medications, her hands slightly unsteady. "The surgery would fix this?" "It should, yes. The procedure would repair the hole in her heart and reduce the pulmonary hypertension." Sophia handed him the pill cup. "But even with my salary here and what I've saved, I'm still short for the specialist's fees. The top pediatric cardiac surgeon in the country has agreed to take her case, but his schedule is booked months in advance." Gabriel took his medication silently, his expression thoughtful. After a moment, he asked, "What's the surgeon's name?" "Dr. Harrison Wells at Boston Children's Hospital. Why?" "Just curious," Gabriel replied. "I have some connections in the medical field." Before Sophia could respond, Mrs. Lancaster appeared at the door. "Mr. Thornton, there's a call for you from the board. They're insisting it's urgent." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "Tell them I'll call back tomorrow." They specifically said it couldn't wait, something about a vote of no confidence. Sophia saw the flash of anger and hurt in Gabriel's eyes before his expression closed off. "Fine. I'll take it in my office." After he wheeled himself out, Mrs. Lancaster turned to Sophia. "The board has been trying to force him out for months. They think the company needs a more visible leader." "That's ridiculous," Sophia said indignantly. "Gabriel is brilliant. His condition doesn't affect his mind." Mrs. Lancaster gave her a knowing look. "It's good to see someone defending him. He needs that more than he'll admit." Later that night, unable to sleep, Sophia wandered to the kitchen for tea. To her surprise, she found Gabriel there, staring out the window into the darkness, a glass of untouched whiskey on the table beside him. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked softly. He didn't turn. "The board is voting next week on whether to remove me as CEO." Sophia moved closer. "Can they do that?" "With enough votes, yes. I own 30% of the company, but that's not a controlling interest." His voice was flat, resigned. "They believe a man in a wheelchair can't effectively lead a Fortune 500 company." "That's discrimination. You could fight it." "And spend years in litigation while the company suffers?" Gabriel shook his head. "I built Thornton Technologies from nothing. I won't be the cause of its downfall." Sophia placed her hand on his shoulder. "You're not giving up?" "I'm being realistic." He finally looked at her, his blue eyes haunted. First my body betrays me, now my company. Perhaps the universe is telling me something. The Gabriel Thornton I've come to know doesn't listen to the universe. He makes his own path. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. The Gabriel Thornton you've come to know is a shadow of who he was. I disagree, Sophia said firmly. The man I see is stronger than he realizes, not despite his challenges, but because of how he faces them. Gabriel reached up, covering her hand with his. Why do you have such faith in me? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Sophia knew she was at a crossroads. She could retreat behind professional boundaries or acknowledge the truth. Because I've seen who you really are, she said quietly, behind the walls you've built, and that person is worth believing in. Gabriel's hand tightened on hers. Sophia, The moment was interrupted by Sophia's phone buzzing loudly. She glanced at it, her heart dropping at the hospital's number. I have to take this, she said urgently. Gabriel nodded, releasing her hand. Hello? Yes, this is Sophia Mitchell? Her face paled as she listened. When? Yes, I understand. I'll be there as soon as possible. She hung up, her hands shaking. It's Lily. She collapsed at my mother's house. They've taken her to the emergency room. Without hesitation, Gabriel wheeled himself to the intercom. Mrs. Lancaster, have the car brought around immediately. We're going to the hospital. We? Sophia asked, surprised despite her worry. Gabriel's expression was resolute. Yes, we. You're not doing this alone. The hospital corridor seemed endless as Sophia rushed toward the pediatric emergency unit, Gabriel keeping pace beside her in his wheelchair. Despite her professional familiarity with hospitals, being here as a mother rather than a nurse filled Sophia with a different kind of dread. Mom, Sophia called out, spotting her mother in the waiting area. Where is she? What happened? Ellen Mitchell rose shakily from her seat, her eyes red-rimmed. They've taken her for tests. She was watching TV and suddenly couldn't catch her breath. Then she just collapsed. Her gaze shifted to Gabriel, surprise momentarily displacing her worry. This is Gabriel Thornton, Sophia explained quickly. My employer. He insisted on coming. Gabriel extended his hand. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Before Ellen could respond, a doctor in blue scrubs approached. Miss Mitchell? I'm Dr. Patel. Your daughter is stable now, but her condition has deteriorated significantly. The ventricular septal defect is causing increased pressure in her pulmonary arteries. What does that mean for her treatment plan? Sophia asked, slipping into her clinical mindset to manage her fear. We need to move up the surgery timeline. Waiting another 3 months as planned is no longer viable. Dr. Patel's expression was grave. I've consulted with Dr. Wells and he agrees. Ideally, we'd schedule the procedure within the next 2 weeks. Sophia felt the floor tilt beneath her. 2 weeks? But his waiting list is months long and the insurance approval process? I understand the challenges, Dr. Patel said sympathetically. But medically speaking, this is my recommendation. I'll have the cardiac team coordinator come speak with you about options. As the doctor walked away, Sophia sank into a chair, the weight of the situation crushing down on her. Even with her savings and the advance Gabriel had given her, she was nowhere near having enough for the accelerated timeline. May I see her? She asked a passing nurse. They're still running tests, but you can go in shortly, the nurse assured her. Gabriel wheeled himself closer to Sophia. What can I do? The simple question, asked with such genuine concern, nearly broke her composure. There's nothing anyone can do. I don't have the resources for emergency surgery with Dr. Wells? What about another surgeon? Ellen suggested. Dr. Wells is the best for this specific procedure, Sophia explained. His mortality rates are half that of other surgeons for complex VSD repairs. I've researched every option. Gabriel was uncharacteristically quiet, his expression thoughtful. After a moment he excused himself, wheeling toward a more private area of the waiting room where he made a phone call. 20 minutes later, Sophia was finally allowed to see Lily, despite the oxygen mask covering her small face and the monitors surrounding her bed. Lily's eyes brightened when she saw her mother. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice muffled by the mask. "Hi, baby." Sophia stroked her daughter's dark curls, so similar to her own. "How are you feeling?" "Tired. My heart's being silly again." Despite everything, Lily managed a small smile. "The doctor said I might get my surgery sooner. Will it make me all better?" "That's the plan," Sophia said, forcing confidence into her voice. "The doctors are going to fix that special heart of yours." "Will it hurt?" "Huh?" "You'll be asleep the whole time," Sophia assured her. "And when you wake up, I'll be right here." Lily's eyes drifted to the doorway where Gabriel had appeared, his tall frame in the wheelchair a striking presence. "Who's that?" she whispered. "That's Gabriel. He's a friend. I take care of him like the nurses here take care of you." Curiosity overcame Lily's fatigue. "Is he sick too?" "He was in an accident," Sophia explained simply. "Would you like to meet him?" At Lily's nod, Sophia motioned Gabriel in. He approached the bed with a gentleness Sophia had never seen from him before. "Hello, Lily. Your mom has told me a lot about you." Lily studied him with the frank curiosity of childhood. "Your chair has wheels. That's cool." A genuine smile transformed Gabriel's face. "It is pretty cool. Sometimes your mom lets me go really fast during therapy." "Do you do therapy like me? I have to do breathing exercises." "Similar, yes. Your mom is an excellent nurse. She's helping me get stronger." Lily's eyelids began to droop, the medication and her condition taking their toll. "I'm getting surgery soon," she murmured sleepily. "Then I can run without getting tired." "That sounds wonderful," Gabriel said softly. "You're very brave." "Mom says bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing things even when you are scared." Lily's eyes closed fully, her breathing evening out as she drifted to sleep. Gabriel looked at Sophia, something profound passing between them. "Your daughter is remarkable," he said quietly. "She's my whole world," Sophia replied, gently adjusting Lily's blanket. They sat in companionable silence until a hospital administrator appeared at the door. "Miss Mitchell, could I speak with you about your daughter's case?" Sophia followed the administrator to a small office, her stomach knotting with anxiety over the financial discussion to come. "I'm Amanda Reeves, the patient financial coordinator," the woman began. "I understand Dr. Wells has agreed to perform your daughter's surgery next week." "That's the medical recommendation, yes, but there are financial considerations." "Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss," Ms. Reeves interrupted, looking at her computer screen. "It appears the surgery has been fully authorized. Dr. Wells' fees, hospital costs, and post-operative care are covered." Sophia stared at her in confusion. "That's not possible. My insurance wouldn't cover Dr. Wells as an out-of-network specialist, and the deductible alone—" "The authorization didn't come through your insurance," Ms. Reeves explained. "The Thornton Foundation has a medical grant program for pediatric cardiac cases. Your daughter's case was submitted and approved this evening. It's quite fortunate, actually. They rarely process applications this quickly." Realization dawned on Sophia. "The Thornton Foundation?" "Yes, Gabrielle Thornton's charitable organization. They fund innovative medical treatments for children with limited access to care." Ms. Reeves smiled. "You must have a guardian angel looking out for you." When Sophia returned to Lily's room, she found Gabriel still there, watching over her sleeping daughter. Their eyes met, and she knew immediately. "You did this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Gabriel didn't deny it. The foundation exists for exactly this purpose. But the speed of approval, the timing— "I made a few calls," he acknowledged. "The foundation's board owes me some favors." Sophia felt tears welling in her eyes. "I can't accept this. It's too much." It's not charity, Sophia, Gabriel said firmly. The foundation funds cases based on medical merit and need. Lily qualified on both counts. Why would you do this for us? Gabriel's expression softened. Because I care about you, both of you. He hesitated, then continued. When I lost the use of my legs, I thought my life was over. I shut everyone out, convinced I had nothing left to offer. Then you came into my life and showed me I was wrong. He reached for her hand. Watching you with Lily tonight, seeing your strength and love, it reminded me that there are things worth fighting for, people worth fighting for. Sophia knelt beside his wheelchair, their faces level. Gabriel, I don't know what to say. Say you'll stop pretending there's nothing between us, he replied, his voice low and intense. Say you'll give us a chance to explore whatever this is. The professional boundaries Sophia had been so determined to maintain seemed insignificant in the face of what they'd shared tonight. What about my position as your nurse? We'll figure it out, Gabriel said. I can hire additional medical staff. What matters is that I don't want to lose you, Sophia. Not when I've finally found someone who sees me, truly sees me. In the quiet hospital room, with her daughter sleeping peacefully nearby, Sophia made her decision. She leaned forward and pressed her lips gently to Gabriel's, a kiss that held both gratitude and promise. Thank you, she whispered against his lips, not just for Lily but for trusting me enough to let me in. Gabrielle's hand came up to cup her cheek. We have a long road ahead of us. My condition, the company situation, Lily's recovery, none of it will be easy. The best journeys rarely are, Sophia replied, a smile finally breaking through her tears. But I think we're both strong enough to handle it. Together. The week following Lily's hospitalization passed in a blur of medical consultations and preparations for surgery. Dr. Wells, a distinguished surgeon with salt and pepper hair and confident hands, walked Sophia through every aspect of the procedure. The VSD is larger than we initially thought, he explained, showing her the latest echocardiogram. But I'm confident we can repair it completely. Lily's young, which works in our favor. Throughout it all, Gabriel remained a steady presence. He rearranged his business schedule to accompany Sophia to appointments, asked insightful questions of the medical team, and even spent time with Lily, who had taken an immediate liking to him. Gabriel's teaching me chess, Lily announced proudly during one of her better days, sitting up in her hospital bed with a magnetic chess set between them. She's a natural strategist, Gabriel told Sophia with genuine admiration. Beat me twice already. I let you win the third game, Lily confided to him in a stage whisper that made both adults laugh. Watching them together stirred something profound in Sophia's heart. Gabriel, who had once been so closed off and bitter, showed a gentleness with Lily that revealed the man he truly was beneath the defensive walls. The night before Lily's surgery, after the little girl had finally fallen asleep in her hospital room, Sophia and Gabrielle retreated to the quiet family lounge. You should get some rest, Gabriel said, noting the dark circles under Sophia's eyes. Tomorrow will be a long day. I can't sleep, she admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I see all the things that could go wrong. Gabriel took her hand. Dr. Wells is the best. The Thornton Foundation wouldn't fund him otherwise. Sophia squeezed his fingers gratefully. It's not just the surgery I'm worried about. It's everything after. Recovery, medications, follow-up care. I'll need to take time off work, but I can't afford to lose my position. Your position is secure, Gabriel assured her. Take all the time you need. But your therapy, your care, can be managed temporarily by someone else? His tone brooked no argument. Sophia, you've spent months taking care of everyone else. Let someone take care of you for a change. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm not used to that. I've noticed, Gabriel said dryly, drawing a watery laugh from her. His expression turned serious. There's something I need to tell you. The board meeting happened yesterday. Sophia tensed. What did they decide? They voted to remove me as CEO, Gabriel said, his voice carefully controlled. Effective immediately. Gabriel, I'm so sorry. Sophia was stunned. Despite knowing it was a possibility, the reality seemed cruel and unjust. What will you do? Fight back eventually, but right now, Lily's surgery takes priority. He smiled slightly. Perspective is a powerful thing. 6 months ago, losing my position would have devastated me. Now, it feels like an inconvenience rather than a catastrophe. Because of your recovery progress? Because of you, Gabriel corrected softly. You showed me there's more to life than corporate power. Some things matter more. The intensity in his blue eyes made Sophia's heart race. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from her mother, who had gone home to rest before the surgery. Mum's bringing Lily's favorite stuffed animal in the morning, Sophia said, grateful for the momentary distraction from the emotions swirling between them. Gabriel nodded, then hesitated before speaking again. There's something else I wanted to discuss with you. After Lily recovers, I'd like you to consider a change in our arrangement. Sophia felt a pang of uncertainty. What kind of change? I want to hire a different nurse for my medical needs, he said carefully. Oh, Sophia tried to mask her hurt. Had she crossed too many professional lines? Had their growing personal relationship compromised her effectiveness as his nurse? Seeing her expression, Gabriel quickly continued, Not because I'm unhappy with your care, the opposite, in fact. He took both her hands in his. I want to free you from being my employee so we can explore what's happening between us without the complications of a professional relationship. Relief and something warmer flooded through Sophia. You've thought this through. I've had plenty of time to think, Gabrielle said with a wry smile. Especially these past few days, watching you with Lily, seeing the kind of mother you are, the kind of woman you are outside of your role as my nurse. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I know the timing is terrible. You have enough to worry about with Lily's surgery. But I wanted you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, whatever challenges come after, I want to face them with you, not as your employer, but as your partner. The word partner hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility. Gabrielle, Sophia began, her voice unsteady. These past months have changed me, too. When I took this job, I was focused solely on providing for Lily. I never expected to find someone who would understand my struggles, support my dreams, and challenge me to see beyond immediate needs to future possibilities. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. I want to explore this too. But you're right. One step at a time. First we get Lily through surgery, then we figure out the rest. Gabrielle brushed a gentle kiss against her lips. The moment was interrupted by a nurse entering the lounge. Miss Mitchell, Lily's asking for you. She woke up a bit disoriented. Sophia immediately stood. I'll be right there. Gabriel caught her hand before she could leave. Remember what Lily said about bravery? It's not about not being scared, but doing things even when you are. Sophia nodded, drawing strength from his words. We'll be brave together then. As she hurried back to her daughter's room, Sophia felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope, not just for Lily's recovery, but for a future filled with possibilities she'd never dared to imagine. In Lily's room, she found her daughter clutching her blanket, eyes wide with pre-surgery anxiety. Mommy, what if I don't wake up? Lily whispered. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, gathering her daughter close. You will, sweetheart. The doctors are going to take excellent care of you, and when you wake up, I'll be right here. Gabriel, too. Promise? I promise, Sophia said firmly, and when you're all better, we have so many adventures waiting for us. Lily's eyes brightened at that. What kind of adventures? As Sophia described future possibilities, trips to the park without getting winded, swimming lessons, maybe even a vacation, she realized. She was no longer speaking just to comfort Lily. She was painting a picture of the life they might have, a life that now included Gabriel in ways she was only beginning to understand. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but tonight, holding her daughter close with the knowledge that they weren't facing those challenges alone, Sophia allowed herself to believe in that future. The surgery waiting room became Sophia's world for 8 agonizing hours. Every tick of the clock, every opening of the door sent her heart racing. Gabriel remained steadfastly by her side, his quiet strength anchoring her through the waves of anxiety. Ellen brought coffee and sandwiches that went largely untouched. Mrs. Lancaster arrived with fresh clothes for both Sophia and Gabriel. Even a few of Gabriel's executive team members stopped by, their presence a silent show of support for their former CEO, despite the board's decision. Family of Lily Mitchell, a surgical resident in blue scrubs, finally appeared at the doorway. Sophia stood on shaky legs. "I'm her mother. Dr. Wells asked me to let you know the surgery was successful. We've repaired the ventricular septal defect completely and addressed the pulmonary hypertension. Lily is being moved to recovery now." Relief crashed through Sophia with such force that her knees nearly buckled. Gabriel reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "When can I see her?" Sophia asked, her voice thick with emotion. "She'll be in post-op for about an hour, then moved to the pediatric ICU. Dr. Wells will speak with you in more detail shortly." As the resident left, Sophia turned to Gabriel, tears streaming freely down her face. "She made it through." Gabriel pulled her into an embrace, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "She's strong, like her mother." The next 48 hours were a blur of ICU protocols, monitoring equipment, and the gradual reduction of Lily's sedation. When she finally opened her eyes, groggy and confused but undeniably alive, Sophia felt as though she could breathe fully for the first time in years. "Hey, sweetheart," she whispered, stroking Lily's hair away from her forehead. "The doctors fixed your heart. You did so well." Lily's eyes roamed the room, landing on Gabriel, who sat quietly in his wheelchair near the foot of the bed. A small smile touched her pale lips. "Did you win any chess games while I was asleep?" she asked, her voice raspy from the breathing tube that had been removed earlier. Gabriel laughed softly. "Not a single one. I need my chess partner back." Over the following days, Lily's recovery progressed remarkably well. The surgical team was pleased with her heart function, and each day brought visible improvements in her energy and color. By the end of the week, she was moved from the ICU to a regular pediatric room. "Look at my scar," Lily proudly showed Gabriel when he visited, carefully pulling down the neckline of her hospital gown to reveal the top of the healing surgical incision. "Dr. Wells says it'll fade, but I think it's cool. It shows I'm brave." "The bravest," Gabriel agreed, presenting her with a small gift box. "I brought you something." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a chess piece queen. "Because you're the queen of the chessboard," he explained, "the most powerful piece in the game." Lily's eyes widened with delight. "It's beautiful. Can I wear it now?" As Sophia helped fasten the bracelet around her daughter's thin wrist, she caught Gabriel's eye over Lily's head. The tenderness in his gaze made her heart swell. Later, when Lily was napping, they walked to the hospital garden, Sophia beside Gabriel as he navigated his wheelchair along the accessible path. "The doctors say she could be discharged next week," Sophia said, still hardly believing the words. "Her recovery is exceeding all expectations." "Where will you go?" Gabriel asked. "Back to your apartment?" Sophia nodded. "It's small, but it's home. My mother has already stocked the freezer with meals and set up Lily's room for her recovery." Gabriel was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, "I have another option to consider, if you're open to it." "What's that?" "The guest house on my property. It's fully accessible, has 2 bedrooms, and would give Lily plenty of space to recover. You'd have privacy, but I'd be nearby if you needed anything." Sophia stopped walking. "Gabriel, that's incredibly generous, but—" "Before you say no," he interrupted gently, "think about the practical benefits. No stairs for Lily to navigate during her recovery, a private garden for her to get fresh air without exposure to crowds, and proximity to the best private physical therapist in the city. He smiled slightly. That would be you, by the way. You've already done so much, Sophia protested. The foundation covering Lily's surgery, your support through all of this. This isn't charity, Gabriel said firmly. This is me wanting to be part of your lives, if you'll let me. He took her hand. The guest house has been sitting empty. It would be my privilege to have it filled with Lily's laughter and your presence. Sophia felt tears threatening again. She'd cried more in the past week than in the previous 5 years combined. What about your care? I can't be your nurse. If we're whatever we're becoming. Already handled, Gabriel assured her. I've hired a new nurse, Mark Daniels, former military medic, highly qualified. He starts next week. You've thought of everything? Sophia said, both impressed and a little overwhelmed. Not everything, Gabriel admitted. I'm still figuring out my next steps professionally. The board's decision has left me at a crossroads. What are you considering? Gabriel's expression turned thoughtful. I founded Thornton Technologies to create adaptive technology that improves lives. Somewhere along the way, it became more about market share and quarterly profits. My accident should have reconnected me with the company's original mission, but I was too busy feeling sorry for myself. He looked up at her. I'm thinking of starting fresh. A new company, focused specifically on adaptive technologies for people with disabilities, using my experience not just as a tech innovator, but as someone who lives with these challenges daily. That sounds perfect for you, Sophia said, genuinely excited by the vision. Your insight would be invaluable. I'd want your input too, Gabriel said. Your experience as a healthcare provider, your practical approach to problem solving, they would be tremendous assets. Sophia felt a flutter of excitement at the possibility. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Thornton? I'm offering you a partnership, he corrected. In every sense of the word. The weight of his words hung between them, full of promise and possibility. An old step at a time, Sophia reminded him gently. Let's get Lily fully recovered first. Agreed, Gabriel smiled. So, the guest house. Sophia considered the offer, weighing practicality against pride. If you're sure it's no imposition. The only imposition would be denying me the chance to help, Gabriel said firmly. 2 weeks later, Sophia stood in the sunlit living room of the guest house, watching through the French doors as Gabriel showed Lily how to play croquet on the level lawn. Lily's movements were still careful, her body healing, but her laughter rang out clear and strong in the summer air. The guest house was charming and comfortable, with wide doorways and no steps originally designed for Gabrielle's grandmother in her later years. Sophia had worried it might feel like charity to accept his offer, but instead, it felt like coming home. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Wells. Latest echo looks perfect. Lily's heart function is excellent. See you at follow-up next month. Sophia stepped outside, the warm June breeze carrying the scent of roses from the garden. Gabriel looked up as she approached, his smile warming his entire face. Good news? He asked, noting her expression. The best, Sophia confirmed. Dr. Wells says Lily's heart is functioning perfectly. Lily beamed, her hand unconsciously touching the scar beneath her t-shirt. See? I told you I'd be all better. Gabriel reached for Sophia's hand, drawing her closer. What do you say we celebrate? Picnic dinner in the garden? Can we have ice cream? Lily asked hopefully. I think that can be arranged, Sophia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. As they gathered supplies for their impromptu celebration, Sophia marveled at how much had changed in just a few months. She had taken the job with Gabriel expecting only to earn enough for Lily's surgery. Instead, she'd found healing not just for her daughter, but for herself, and for the wounded man who had somehow become essential to both their lives. The future still held uncertainties. Gabriel's new business venture was in its infancy. Lily would need ongoing monitoring, though her prognosis was excellent. and the relationship blooming between Sophia and Gabriel would require care and nurturing to fully flourish. But watching Gabrielle patiently showing Lily how to hold the croquet mallet, Sophia felt a certainty deep in her soul. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, not as employer and employee, not as patient and nurse, but as a family forged through adversity and bound by something far stronger than circumstance. Fall arrived with golden leaves drifting across the expansive grounds of the Thornton estate. 3 months had passed since Lily's surgery, and their lives had found a new rhythm, more peaceful, more hopeful. Lily had returned to school, able to fully participate in physical activities for the first time. Each afternoon she excitedly recounted new games in gym class or races during recess. "I was the fastest runner today," Lily announced one October afternoon, eyes bright with pure joy. "My new heart works so well." Sophia smiled, still moved whenever Lily spoke of her new heart. "You've always had the most amazing heart, sweetie. The doctors just helped it work better." While Lily made remarkable progress, Gabriel was undergoing his own transformation. Losing his CEO position at Thornton Technologies had become a blessing in disguise. With substantial financial resources and industry reputation, he had founded Adaptive Innovations, a startup focused on assistive technologies for people with disabilities. "We just received funding from the Medical Innovation Fund," Gabriel announced one evening as they dined at the main house. Mark, Gabriel's new nurse, had gone home after completing his shift, and Lily was doing homework in the living room. "That's wonderful." Sophia squeezed his hand across the table. "For which project?" "The iRebel system for quadriplegics," Gabriel explained, passion evident in his voice. "Current technology is prohibitively expensive for most patients. We're developing a solution that costs 80% less while maintaining accuracy." 1 year to the day after Lily's surgery, the Thornton estate was transformed for a celebration. Lanterns hung from trees, casting a warm glow over the garden where tables had been arranged for an intimate gathering of friends and family. Dr. Wells attended with his wife, beaming with pride at Lily's progress. Ellen Mitchell chatted animatedly with Mrs. Lancaster, who had become a dear friend. Even some of Gabriel's former executives came to celebrate, having left Thornton Technologies to join his new venture. "I can't believe it's been a year," Sophia said, watching Lily demonstrate cartwheels for an impressed audience. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, other times it seems like another lifetime." "A lot can change in a year," Gabriel agreed, his hand finding hers. "For the better." Adaptive Innovations had exceeded all expectations, securing major contracts with rehabilitation centers nationwide. Sophia had become an integral part of the medical advisory team, her practical insights shaping products that truly addressed patients' needs. Gabriel's physical progress had been equally impressive. With intensive therapy and sheer determination, he now walked with only a slight limp, using a cane for longer distances. The wheelchair remained for days when pain flared up, but those were increasingly rare. As evening fell, Gabriel clinked his glass, calling for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began. "1 year ago, a brilliant surgeon repaired a little girl's heart. What none of us knew then was how that same little girl and her extraordinary mother would repair mine." Sophia felt tears welling as Gabriel continued. "Before Sophia and Lily came into my life, I was a man defined by what I'd lost. They taught me to focus instead on what I could gain, what I could give." He turned to face Sophia directly. "You showed me that true strength isn't about power or position, but about opening your heart, even when you're afraid." Gabriel reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. A collective gasp rose from the guests as he carefully lowered himself to one knee. "Sophia Mitchell, you came into my home as my nurse and became my heart's keeper. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" The ring inside the box caught the lantern light, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, as blue as Gabriel's eyes. "Yes," Sophia whispered, then louder, "Yes." As Gabriel slipped the ring onto her finger, Lily rushed forward, throwing her arms around both of them. "Does this mean we'll be a real family?" she asked, eyes wide with hope. "We already are," Gabriel assured her, pulling a smaller box from his other pocket. "But this makes it official." Inside was a delicate necklace with a heart-shaped pendant that matched Sophia's ring. "For my other favorite girl," he said, helping Lily fasten it around her neck. Later, as their guests enjoyed dessert and music filled the garden, Sophia and Gabriel stole a moment alone by the lake where they had first confessed their love. "Are you happy?" Gabriel asked, echoing the question he'd asked her that evening on the boat. Sophia looked at her ring, then back at the celebration where Lily was teaching Ellen and Mrs. Lancaster a dance move. "Beyond words," she answered truthfully. "A year ago, I was just trying to save my daughter. I never imagined I'd find my own healing in the process." "We healed each other," Gabriel said, drawing her close. "And we're just getting started." As they rejoined the party, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun as a desperate mother taking a job she wasn't sure she could handle had transformed into a love story none of them could have predicted. Gabrielle's new company was revolutionizing assistive technology. Lily was thriving, her heart strong and her future bright. And Sophia had found not just financial security but a partner who valued her strength, intelligence, and compassion. The guest house that had been their temporary haven would soon be vacated as they moved into the main house as a family. Sophia had initially worried about maintaining their independence, but Gabriel had shown her that true partnership meant growing together without losing yourself. "What are you thinking about?" Gabriel asked, noticing her thoughtful expression as they watched Lily demonstrate her chess skills against Dr. Wells. "About how life takes unexpected turns," Sophia replied. "How sometimes the hardest challenges lead to the greatest joys." Gabriel smiled, his eyes reflecting the same wonder she felt. "To unexpected turns," he said, raising his glass in a private toast. "And to the journey ahead," Sophia added, clinking her glass against his. As night fell and stars appeared above the Thornton estate, they celebrated not just Lily's healed heart, but the new life they had built together, a life defined not by what they had overcome, but by the love they had found along the way.